Do you love me?
Do I what?
Do you love me?
Hello, my name is Father Timothy Ty, and this is our 190th segment of our journey of faith in the light of the cross, and I thank you so much for joining us. We look up on the screen for our theme for this segment, and we read, Leviticus unifies old morality and sacrifice scrolls with rituals seen in the kingdoms of Persia and Babylon, that's Iran and Iraq. The exiles wanted to worship Yahweh in the kingdom of heaven with greater dignity and holiness than Goy honored their gods and kings. We go on to our next screen and we read, Leviticus was edited in Babylon to promulgate Moses' Torah law on morality and animal sacrifice. The exiles considered their heroic daily observance of Torah as an offering and a sacrifice to Yahweh, as we do at Mass. The sacrifice of an animal's lifeblood poured out reflected their own feelings. The severe limits of law limited the flow of their love to God and family. Thus their love felt pent up inside their hearts. Animal sacrifice allowed them to vicariously pour out their love to Yahweh, family, and Israel. There's a very important screen. We go on to our next screen. And they did not want any Jerusalem priest treating their heroic observance lightly. Their sacrifice was to be offered more reverently and formally than any sacrifice in Babylon or Persia. Exiles witnessed the respect and formality demanded by the world's kings. Exiles considered their sacrifices to Yahweh as far more important. Leviticus commanded Jerusalem priests to consecrate their offerings in a most reverent and formal way. We go on to our next screen and we read, Levites sought through sacrifice to feel Yahweh's love and approval, much more than to appease his wrath, which is the normal interpretation that I don't agree with. Babylonians felt proud of their heroic faithfulness, and Jesus must have felt good about his sacrifice. Leviticus detailed the rituals and formalities to raise the consciousness of Jerusalem priests who tended to worry about money and carried out the sacrifices in a casual manner, for many forgot their life in exile. Leviticus chapter 10 gave them a serious warning, for it portrays Aaron's sons being consumed for lighting a profane temple fire. And so we read on our next screen, Leviticus 10:1. Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu strewed incense on a profane fire not commanded by Torah. Fire came forth from the Lord's presence and consumed them, so they died in his presence. The Babylonian Levites used this story to warn the Jerusalem priests, do not take the ritual laws and formalities lightly. God warns us that we are in a life and death struggle for the survival of Israel. We go on to our next screen and we read, Leviticus was edited in Babylon from 600 to 400 BC. That's what we've been covering, using scrolls handed down from Moses in 1300 BC. But since Egypt wrote a Canaanite language different from Hebrew and Aramaic, the scrolls were translations somewhere along the way. Now we look at this timeline, 1320 to 1280 BC is approximately the wilderness desert time. Then the 40 years from 1280 to 1240 is Joshua conquering the promised land. Then we skip down to 1000 when David was king. Then we skip to 950 when the J or Yahweh writers wrote. And 950 to 22 is the years of Solomon. And then we jump down. The exile began in 589. I usually round it off at 600 to 400 when the Levites and the priests edited their scripture. Now, why do I put this up here? To better understand how God inspired Scripture, we have to heroically search Scripture as the exiles did in Babylon to understand how God used historical situations to inspire and integrate Scripture. So this is a lot more difficult way of looking how God inspired Scripture. We go on to our next screen. The exiles lived daily in fear of being humiliated and soiled by the filth of the Goy kingdoms. So they ordered their daily lives in ways to avoid being humiliated and soiled. Thus, order was zealously observed, and any form of disorder was a violation of Torah and sinful. Thus, the words cleanliness and purity became an essential part of the daily order that Torah commanded. This order is what set Israel apart and made them peculiar, for these two words define the word holy. We go on to our next screen and we read, Leviticus lists the commands, but the words order, purity, cleanliness, and holy leave an impression, a deep emotional feeling and tone on the reader. So you hear the words, but what's the feeling you get? Leviticus inserts order, purity, cleanliness, and holy to define both sexual morality and animal sacrifice. So when Leviticus was read on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, these sacred words empowered all Torah's commands, even if there was no temple at the time when it was read. There are 297 commands in Leviticus concerned with temple offering and animal sacrifice. They are supposedly irrelevant without a temple. Aha, but are they? We go to our next screen and we read. Why then do Jews read these commands each year? Because each Judaic home, both in Babylon and in the present day, considers their home an extension of the temple, especially concerning pure offerings consecrated to God on high holy days like the lamb on Passover. In this context, there is a great power in the morality because of the emotional impression and tone in the words order, purity, clean, and holy, for they connect animal sacrifice to sexual morality and the survival of Jewish families. We go on to our next screen and we read, John 19, verse 34. One soldier thrust his lance into his side, and immediately blood and water flowed out of Jesus. You remember this in John's Gospel. Now the springs of Gihon in Jerusalem provided the water to rinse the temple of the blood of animal sacrifice. Blood was splashed on the altar and temple walls as a life-giving cleanser. That's important. Then rinsed away into the Kidron Valley. This ritual made the temple alive as the blood mystically gave life. So the temple only came to life when there was sacrifice going on. Thus Christians are washed in the blood of the Lamb and refreshed in the eternal springs of Gihon. We go on to our next screen and we read, the tone and impression of Leviticus helped Jesus' disciples to understand the crucifixion. For Jesus, the eternal temple, had blood and water flow from his side to wash the world and rinse away the filth of sin. Thus, his life-giving love, which was stifled by so many people, could flow freely upon all those who looked up at the cross. And we think of that beautiful old hymn, Jesus, keep me near the cross, there a special fountain, free to all, a healing spring flows from Calvary's mountain. As we read the final screen and we listen to the beautiful hymn, I want to thank you so much for joining us for this 190th segment of our journey of faith in the light of the cross, and I hope you feel God's love flowing down upon you.
Flows from Calvary's mountain.